In the world, I feel we all have one similar goal that we all tend to gravitate towards, and that would be wanting love. Simply put, it's probably the best feeling you can ever have, just knowing you have your own partner or another person that you can be with, and feeling love and giving love is probably the best thing you could do in the world. And then you see countless generations have their own examples of how they live through love. You have some people who wish they could go back in the olden times and, have a guy just sneak through their window with love, which is something that's very unrealistic, but it's always sweet to think about. And then you have the newer generation that's like, hey, love is destroyed because of social media, because of TikTok, all this other yada yada yada. And it's like, I just feel like if your love was real, can it really be destroyed? You know what I'm saying? And then I also think that the craziest part people tend to forget about love is the vulnerability aspect. To fall in love, you have to be vulnerable enough to give away your feelings to another person and express them to the fullest extent. Now, many people have this past where they get hurt or they go on a cold streak where they're stuck in these talking stages and they never make it out, and they're like, oh my goodness, I'm done with men, women, etc. I just can't do it anymore. I'm done for the year. Like, I can't. Love isn't for me. And the funniest part about all of this is you're hearing people say this and they're like 12 to 15, the youngest people ever saying this. And then those same people, when they finally meet a new person, you hear them talk about this new person and you understand how protective they are over themselves. Because as humans, we don't want to get hurt. No one ever wants to get hurt. But you kind of have to experience hurt sometimes to learn, and that's just how it is. And if you're going to want to be loved, you have to be willing to be hurt. That's the cost. It simply is. Yeah, I would love it if that I could tell you that the next relationship you get into is going to be the love of your life. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And on the off chance that it's not, how are you going to protect yourself, or not protect yourself, but be prepared for in that case it's not. You just kind of have to live with that fact. So you have to be vulnerable. You have to be enough to express yourself to this person, be like, hey, I want you, all of you, and that's it. Because if you're not going to be vulnerable enough, then you got one person who's trying to break down walls that you just keep building up. And then you're like, why doesn't this person know me enough? You never allowed it. You can't build a bunch of walls and constantly expect someone to just want to climb them forever. Simply put, look, okay, I get it. You don't need to spill everything out the first time you meet someone. I'm not telling you to completely destroy any suspicions you have, but you have to let them down at some rate. Because if you do not, then there's never going to be any chance of someone getting in. You have to let people in for them to be able to love you. People can't love you from a distance. And I don't mean that as in like you live in Texas, they live in California. I mean it in the sense that you cannot block them off to where they know surface level information about you and you expect them to love you so deeply. That's just not real. Because love takes the vulnerability for you to be like, hey, I'm not okay. I'm not happy with this. Can we talk about it? There's so many things that you have to kind of put yourself in some uncomfortable situations, especially when it's over something that you don't normally feel. And I think the worst vulnerability part that people struggle with is how they keep themselves mad. When you're mad is when you're usually the angriest, and people tend to not tell their partner when they're mad. One of the worst traits I think you can have. Because why would you just let someone think that everything's okay when you know it's not? Your best goal, your best interest would be to tell them, but are you going to do that is the real question. You have to be able to let people in. Simply put, that's all they ask for. That's all they can do for you. So if you ever want to find love, remember to be vulnerable. Also with that, if you have been hurt in the past and you have a cold streak, do not ever just cut off love entirely. That's just not smart. I can't say that everybody has their own person because they really don't, but that doesn't mean you should stop looking so early because of these slight inconveniences that you're facing at such a young age. It just wouldn't make any sense to do that, am I right? And then you can't walk into your new relationships or your new found love interest or whatever and expect them to have the same negative qualities that the last person did. This is another human. You have to remember that. I get you can be scarred from the last person, but not every person you go after that person will be the exact same. That just doesn't make any sense to do that. Because now you have all these things that you don't believe about this person. Now you don't think this person's genuine, and they're telling you all these genuine things, but you can't believe it because the last person from months ago was not genuine, and you're comparing these two. but not in the way of, oh, this one's better because his traits are nicer to me. You're comparing them as in the, oh, he's the exact same, so this is going to end up the exact same way. What do you gain from that? The person you fall in love with isn't going to be the same person that breaks your heart. And when I mean that, I don't mean that they leave you. I mean that it's a person that has already been out of your life. And you just can't expect that exact same person. It's kind of unfortunate, but that's just the truth. And yeah, that person's going to have these bad mistakes that they did, but you can't think every other person will make the exact same mistakes. At the end of the day, we are all different. And to get to know how different a person is, you have to be vulnerable.